Welcome to the February 2026 edition of Upfront and Real, brought to you by Ohio Cooperative Living Magazine and Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. I'm Karen Whitney, Director of Communications. With me is Craig Grooms, our President and CEO. And we're actually still in this extreme cold front. I thought we had to talk about this. 10, 20 inches of snow less than a week ago. Now we're into single digit temperatures. I know we got in some trouble a couple Christmases ago with the supply and demand getting very close. How have we been doing during this cold snap? It's been relatively smooth. So we've had several days of below zero weather or temperatures, especially during the nighttime hours. This has been a long cold stretch too. Typically it's 2 or 3 days, and we've seen 7 days of cold weather. It started with a lot of snow, a lot of ice south of us. I think the states of Mississippi, Tennessee received quite a bit of ice and a lot of storm damage. They're receiving mutual aid from the states surrounding them. Ohio generally was less affected, 10 to 15 inches of snow, some wind, but the transmission, the distribution systems, for the most part, held together. And then in terms of power grid operations, that's where we were stressed, going back a couple years ago. And that typically starts with when it's this cold, it becomes a challenge to get natural gas. So our coal plants overperform. They've done a great job. Nuclear plants are doing well. Natural gas generation is still the dominant resource in our neck of the woods. We've been able to procure natural gas. It's been very expensive, not just in Ohio, but really across the eastern part of the United States. But owning assets has been a benefit, right? So we've had generation to offset the very high prices that we're seeing in the wholesale markets in PJM. And so again, it's another benefit to our members of owning generation where you are insulated from a lot of this volatility. So overall, things have gone pretty well. Loads are high, a lot of power is flowing, a lot of natural gas generation, a lot of coal generation, a lot of nuclear generation, but the system is held together. I think it's probably helped in terms of having school outages. Businesses have been off because of the amount of snow, and so that's helped dampen the peak loads a little bit. But overall, the system has remained steady, and again, our generation fleet has performed well, and I think our members can be proud of that. Yeah, and our members are always great about being energy efficient. They know that it's cold outside. They know power is going to be perhaps in short supply. Right, so we thanks folks for that too. Okay, next big topic. We've talked about it a lot last year. We're into 2026 now. It continues to be the big topic, and that's data centers. Yes. And I know one of the questions that you get a lot of the times, and we want to make sure that folks can hear the answer to that, is what are co-ops going to do to ensure that these large load data centers that just use up a lot of electricity, the cost of that is not going to end up on members, but also just consumers in Ohio? Yeah, so it's a question we've heard a lot of over the last, let's say, the year. Data centers have been in the news for a couple years now. More recently, we've heard concerns about data centers causing higher electricity prices for all consumers. And I wish it was as simple as just a one response answer, but it's more complicated than that. Recently, in the news, there's been a lot of commentary about higher capacity prices in PJM, and they operate a market to procure capacity for people who don't own generation. And those prices have gone up, and a lot of that is attributed to the higher data center load forecasts. Fortunately, co-op members in Ohio were insulated from that, right? We own our own generation. We don't really have exposure to those kinds of things. But there's also a whole list of other pressures that all consumers are really exposed to. Transmission costs, so our use of the power grid has gone up probably 400% over the last 15 years. General inflation, we've all heard about higher costs for electrical utility equipment, transformers, breakers, conductor. Many of those have increased 3 times, 4 times. So it's the indirect pressure. So there's more demand for electrical equipment from data centers and others, and that pushes the price up for everyone, and that impacts all of our consumers and our members. But it's not really just associated with the generation. It's more widespread than that. We've seen a lot of inflation over the last 5 years. That creeps into electricity prices. Fuel costs have been generally stable. It helps to have coal purchases that they have typically low long-term prices, and that has helped minimize the fuel costs, but all of our members are still exposed to higher costs for equipment,
unemployment rate is still low, so labor is a little bit higher. Trying to find vendors and contractors at our power plants to do major work, that all has gone up. And so that all leaks into
Everything
the rate that
impacts
we
it.
pay. And so we've heard recently, again, that data centers are the primary cause, but it's a little bit deeper and more complicated than that. They're part of the issue in terms of increasing demand, but it's a little more than just data centers existing and therefore prices are higher.
Right, and we have seen people misunderstanding it. And so
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
good that we talk about it, that, that could be some effect, but there's all these other things
That's right.
that we know. And we know that by going to the grocery store too,
That's
seeing
right.
the high prices. Talking about that, PJM, we were talking about PJM, which is the manager of the grid, the 13 states that Ohio is a part of. They put out some new directives this week when it comes to large loads,
right.
data centers coming in to the states. How does that impact co-ops?
Yeah, it's really unprecedented what they have released. So formal rules haven't been written yet, but the 13 states, the governors of the 13 states in Pennsylvania, the White House, they did a joint statement or released a joint statement that said new data center load really needs to bring new generation online. And so PJM, as the grid operator, will have to take that directive and turn that into rules. And that's what we're going to see over the next few months. But the important message is that all of these new data centers that are coming online, they will in some way have new generation brought online to serve that load. What we've seen over the last several years is a lot of new data center load growth without corresponding increases in generation. And so this new directive will help balance that situation. It'll take some time, but again, I think most of the co-op members in Ohio will be insulated from a lot of that because they own their own generation. But in terms of reliability for the grid, we can expect over the next 3, 4, 5, 7 years that as we see more data center load come on, there will be associated generation coming on as well to help keep the...
We've been seeing that get imbalanced.
Exactly,
on
and that's the
charts,
concern. And so, government works at the speed of government. And so the problem has been recognized, and we've talked about it for a year, 2 years, and now the government and the regulatory bodies are catching up, and they're going to work on issuing those rules.
Yeah, and co-ops here in Ohio, but even across the country, have been real instrumental in making sure that we fight for this, because reliability, affordability are the things that we promise the most. That's our mission.
Fact.
Well, thank you, Craig, for talking with us. We appreciate you watching, and we will see you next month.